guys, BBI here. I want to stop and say thanks for tuning in and checking out whatever the video is about that's about ready to come up next. If you could take a minute and hit subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoy what you've seen here, make sure to hit the like button. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Anyhow, guys, all that aside, let's get on with the show. The spiders are pissed at me when I move their home here. Oh. Not gonna lie, this is the best packed sb220 I have ever seen. Heathkit sb220 high frequency linear amplifier. Filament inrush current protection variation number 2. No. Although the modification can be used in a linear amplifier, What? P.S. There's some for the large knobs. I got my own set of Bristol wrenches, bro. Thank you, though. Okay, 1. Improve parasitic chokes to reduce arcing. Okay, improve power supply reliability. Improve efficiency on 10 meters. 4. Touch up paint. No, I'm not doing that. 6. Meter operation. That's okay. 6. Filament inrush current protection. Standby switch and dual speed blower. Cure the noisy fan. This is awesome, by the way. Protect the panel meters. We can do that with a simple resistor. Cure parasitics once and for all. Totally done. sb220 tuning aid. Alright. Increase relay life. We can do that with a diode. Alright. This amp has been in storage for 30 years and I have no knowledge of its current condition. I would like you to overhaul it and carry out any modifications you feel are important. As per requested, I have enclosed a soft key, SK220, and a filter cap set. Hope you don't have any problems with the amp. I could not stand the thought of this equipment going into the garbage. Just do what you do, that you do so well. Thanks. Well, bro, I got you, man. Relax. It's in the right place. I've seen 1 or 2 of these in my life. Oh, 11 o'clock in the evening. I'll be back. Okay, so where were we before we got interrupted? Let me see, I gotta put this with this over here. Alright, so let's see here. It's a data sheet. This is the list that I'm going to go by. This checklist right here. That's always a given. Improve parasitic choke to reduce arcing. We're going to do that. We're going to improve the power supply's reliability 100%. We're going to retune the thing for 10 meters because the stock slug is horrible. Touch up paint. I've got an auto body shop that I think I can work with. The 6 meter operation, if I remember correctly when we spoke on the phone, we didn't want to do this modification because that means we had to sacrifice one of the positions on the band switch. Let me think about this for a second. Yeah, I'd have to abandon a position on the band switch, move everything over, and then retap the coil for 6 meters. But it's possible. This is a possible thing. Filament inrush current protection, standby switch, and dual speed blower. The dual speed blower, the cure the noisy fan we can take care of. Tuned input 160 meter operation. So do you want me to add 160 meters to it, because right now it only goes to 80, or do you want me to create a 6 meter position? We're gonna have to come back to this one. Continuous duty operation. That's not possible. And the reason that's not possible is because of the power supply that's in this box. It's an intermediate rated only supply.
Yes, master.
We're going to add the soft key, that's for sure. For us to get continuous operation out of this, we'd have to change how the tubes are cooled. We'd have to go to a blower enclosure, a pressurized enclosure 1. So we could cool the filament pins. That's the most important thing. Then the second most important thing is that we'd have to change the plate supply. Because remember now, the way it sits now, stock, it has an intermediate supply in it for 30% duty cycle, and it's a voltage doubler. Okay, so the output of this thing is only about 100 or 1,000-ish volts, and the capacitor bank is actually half of the rectifier circuit, and that allows us to double the voltage, but we lose some of the amperage in that process. So for us to go to continuous operation, we'd have to go to a full wave rectifier power supply and a much bigger transformer that is continuously duty rated. So we're going to have to skip over 11. Yes, universal ALC for the sb220. We're going to double check this. We can add a resistor for the panel meters. Current parasitics once and for okay. Tuning aid, yeah, we can do that, and filament inrush protection. Increase relay life. We can do we can do like what you have circled: 17, 15, 14, 13, 12. Maybe. Totally 8. 9 is going to be out for sure. Anyhow, let's get this thing unpacked. Let's see what we've got in the goodie box here. For my instructions he bought himself, this is the high voltage supply, capacitor bank from Harbach. You can't use the cheap ones, you guys. They'll run for about a year, and then you're going to have some problems. These are the supplies you want. This is the capacitors you want. Made by Cornell Dubbler. These are the sheet. 210 UF at 450 volts DC. Absolutely wonderful. Let's see. That would be the boards and the standoffs. This is going to be the auto key circuit. This is the high voltage board, capacitor board. And this is the standoff, or the auto key circuit. Let's see what else, man. This thing's in good shape. I love how this is packed. No effing around here. Beautiful. Beautiful. There's no room for movement. We got a nice solid 1 inch worth of padding all the way around it, and a hard non-crushable case. This Pelican case is expensive. And he goes, well, you can just keep it if you want to ship it back your way. And I'm like, no, it's coming back in this case. When it showed up in a cardboard box. So you had the Pelican case inside of a cardboard box. It was beautiful. All right. Oh, you old girl, come here. Oh, but it was in a smoking environment. It's got the cigarette tinge to the outside. That doesn't mean the inside isn't pristine, but we'll find out. Let's put all of our foam back in here, because you are going back home in this box. Let us begin. We want to stand these up off the board a little bit so they get good air circulation around them. Okay, so beginner's tip to these annoying basting freaking spacers. I'm going to use them because they're in the kit. 9 times out of 10, if the holders are actually in good shape on the stock holders, if they're in good shape, I'll use those because they actually grab a hold of the whole capacitor. But the tip is that you put the top side in first. This side with the ring, you're going to insert this first. Insert. And they are a mother humper to get together. Okay. Spit on it. Use a little bit of lube or some shit, I don't know. All I know is that these caps work way scooching better than the little tiny kit that they send. Okay, so you got to put the front spacer on first, and that's going to help you hold all these ball smashing things in place, like so, as you go to try and massage the back one on. Now remember, this side, the end of the capacitor bank is rounded, so in theory this should go together easier. Okay. Now, there was a time where I used to think if I put a little bit of dry lube on this, like some silicone-based whatever, but remember, we're dealing with high voltage and it likes to run all over the damn place. And there's very little other than clean, non-conductive surface to keep the high voltage from running across these caps. So, if I put any kind of lube per se on this, you'll pay for it down the road. So don't do it. You gotta just muscle through it. Don't worry. If you play with it enough, eventually it'll fit. It sounds like we're talking about something else, but this is living proof. Sometimes it takes 2 fists to stretch the holes out enough to make it fit. Unfun. Okay. So you want to take this back spacer and push it in about a good 1/2 inch, like that. Alright. Now we're going to flip our cap bank over, and we're going to orientate it. Now, you're going to see on this board B+, ACL2, or pardon me, L3, B negative. That's ground, by the way, you guys, up here. Then AC, okay, which is our center tap, and then B+. Okay. So the way this goes is negative on this side, positive here. So now we're going to in turn turn this cap So it's negative, positive, negative, positive. Here, this side, this one here has got to be negative, positive. Of course, then once again, turn this cap, negative, positive. Over here, we're going to turn this cap around. So it's negative, positive. And then negative, positive. And then negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. The way that works out is your AC line is going to go between these two joints here. You're going to have your positive and positive, or positive and then your negative here. So this sits on here like so. And if you've assembled all of this correctly, the only thing that you might have to do is maybe bend the legs of these resistors up just a hair. This is important. These are your bleeders. Look at how pretty those are. See that? All bent the same. They're all stood off the same. These resistors get hot, and since there's no airflow, no air action on these to cool them, to give you the best possible chance to success and long-term viability of this board, you stand these up. You do not put them flat down on the board and then pull the legs through the holes. This is a through-hole solder construction. So when you go and do your soldering, you got to make sure that the amount of solder that you add to this side flows thoroughly through and mounts up and hits these solder joints here. Then you're going to use a sharp pair of wire dikes. You're going to trim this off so that this is flush. You cannot have these hanging down. If there's a nipple here, you are running the chance of, when you mount this up, of it making contact with the ground edge of the capacitor. Very, very outside edge possibility, but it is there, so I have to mention it. All right, let me assemble this thing the rest of the way. Okay, I got to get hustling. Now, I've done a bunch of these in my time, right? I can put this keying circuit together without thinking. You see how that's assembled? See what parts go where? If you choose to buy one of these, and you're not the ham radio operator that has to order his coax connectors from, or jumpers from DX Engineering, because they come with the nice, as I heard a guy say on the 2-meter the other night, those nice press fit ends, and you understand what the hell a soldering iron is, and you have the ability to use one, you can do this too. We're going to take a wire off on the bottom side of the amp. This is going to attach back on one of the pegs by the rear tube socket. So we want to leave this little nylon standoff. So that's loose. You want to leave that loose. But this is as far as you want to go with the pre-assembly on this. Now what this does, this soft key circuit, is because an sb220 works on a closed loop 110 volt keying circuit. When you step on the pedal or provide ground on the RCA jack on the back of the sb220, you're shorting 1/2 of a 110 circuit. Okay. It's DC, by the way. And that is no good for most modern radios. Most of your modern radios work on a 12 volt closed loop negative ground system. This takes that 110 volts to 115 volts, whatever DC that the relay runs on, and it converts it down to something small and soft that the radio internally, the little micro switch that's inside the radio, can handle, and it's not going to cause any damage to your modern radio. Now, they make a mother effing junk, MFJ, makes a little standalone ALC control unit. It's an all-in-one unit. You basically take your modern radio, you plug it into this thing. You take your ALC, your amp remote switch, all that kind of stuff, and you plug it into this box along with your coax, and then comes out of that is 2 RCA jacks and a piece of relay, or a piece of coax. So you hook that into the back of the amplifier, the coax, and then you hook up the 2 RCA jacks. One goes to the ALC circuit, and the other one goes to the keying circuit on the back of like your Henrys and that kind of thing, and the sb220s and the sb221s, And it's basically got this circuit in it, plus an auto RF detection circuit, and it's also got an isolator circuit from the ALC, because some of the old tube amplifiers, they can put out like 50 to 70 volts on the ALC circuit, which can fry the ALC circuit in most of the standard today amplifiers. It's amazing. The radios change, but the amps stay almost exactly the same. 50 years worth of technology. So let's get this heavy old girl over here. Let's see what we gotta do. First impression, very clean. This is a home build. There's no serial numbers on the back from the factory. Okay, you see how these are gold? You see how this is all gold? This should be silver. And if you look, the face of this thing's got an orange tint to it. That orange tint, when you guys see that, means smoker environment, which is no good. Now, as I was reorganizing the shop after coming home from the break here, I realized I've got myself an ass bucket of parts. So, cigarette stinge. Check this out. Now, surprisingly, the inside of this amp looking through the armor looks really good. So what I'm getting at is if we can't get these knobs to clean up, because sometimes this stain won't come off. If we can't get this orange tinge to come off of this thing, I don't have a lot of time to spend on this. And I'm not going to sit here and hand polish these things. I'm going to go over, open one box. God, look at the crap running off the face of this thing down here. And no, this isn't Lysol, by the way. This is 409. The new 409 jugs that you can buy at the store suck balls. My big manly hands, or as I like to put them, my little weak little hands, I grab a hold of the frickin' new 409 bottle and the frickin' sprayer comes right off of my hand. Bad engineering. So, we are currently cleaning with 409, not Lysol. Just wanted to see how our lettering is going to come out, and this thing is actually going to come up nice and clean. But man, the cigarette stain. Ugh. Pot smoke's 10 times worse, you guys. I don't care what the stoners say. Oh man, no one's ever... Oh, no, wait a minute. You know what that tells me? Should do this. Because somebody has stood on this for so hard and had it so far out of resonance when they were running it, they kept arcing this tuner. The stock tuner is actually way better than the RF parts tuner. By far, way better. They bought the aftermarket RF parts tuner. Bummer. But I happen to know a guy that knows a guy that might have a couple. Yeah, see, I can feel it. The armor, it's sticky. Very sticky. Well, let's slide the outer armor, which is this piece. Let's slide this off, and to do that I got to take the 4 feet off, and then we slide it out this way. We go in reverse. And the idea is that we want to keep from scratching this paint here on the front. Now what I do also notice is I'm looking at this a little bit closer, as we are missing hardware, and that hole is hogged out. That's a little bit of a bummer. Alright, let's slide it apart and see what we got to play with on the inside. Now this is a plus. This is all the stock hardware. The downside is I am going to be running to Ace probably tomorrow to buy new rubber's feet. These are all soft and oh, that's no good. These are all soft and completely worn out. These are hashed. So I'm not going to send it back to where if the guy goes and slides it up on his bench, it's going to, or his desk or whatever, it's going to scratch his desk, which this one, these two rear ones would. Okay, so like I said, without being overly violent, that's how we take that off. Now, it's got a ding in the cabinet here, right here. Paint's all peeled off, and now he wanted me to take this down and get this painted. We could do that, but we're not gonna. I got a better idea. Have faith. Have faith. There's a plan, man. Okay, so now we got orange tinge on this side of the cabinet as well. But the underside of this thing is virginal, except for this tuner mod. And somebody else did it. That is nice. They did a nice install on it. This is a 90s build, or a late 80s build, early 90s build. And this cap gives it away. Stock relay, good parasitic choke. Nice. We're going to disconnect this wire, by the way, and we're going to move it over here for the soft key. Oh God. Oh God. This sucker's frozen. I bet you when you plug this in, it makes all kinds of racket. Oh Lordy. Somebody did a good job when they built this. They really did. It's nice that I'm not going to have to completely disassemble most of this down here and clean it up. This actually looks really, really good. Your common ground lug, currently wired for 220. And by the way, for you guys that don't know, you tie this leg and this leg together for 110, and 220, you tie the center post together. So we're going to pull out these chokes. We're going to ground the grids. We're going to get rid of these caps, which are worthless. That is a long-running debate, by the way. There are several web pages out there that are dedicated to just the debate of grounding grids. I've seen this cause more problems by these chokes going bad and causing the grid to lose its reference to ground than I have grid shock. Okay, and I'm going to officially go on record saying that, and I'm not scared. You can go read the posts in the forums where the guy sits around and postulates and masturbates and thinks about stuff and then gets 2 or 3 of his buddies to agree with him. What we're talking about is a grid short. A grid short on a 3500Z. Like when the grids reach the end of their lives and the grids actually either short over to a portion of the anode screen or they go the filaments and they short across. And how that can possibly, very possibly, never seen it not one time out of, what, 500-600 repairs, take out the filament transformer, which, by the way, they now make a replacement of at EPD Electronic Product Design. That doesn't ever happen. The electrical current pulse doesn't travel back up and go to the filament. It actually comes over here and it whacks out the frickin' quarter wave rectifier for the DC voltage for the relay. And then one of the tubes take all the pressure of the filament current and they run away. And you can measure that. The only thing that stands there and blocks anything is this capacitor, and you can sit there and watch the voltage on this capacitor just go. It'll sit there and it'll level off at the 100 or whatever volts, usually 150 volts, until the cap actually physically breaks down, the insulation on the inside of the capacitor starts to fail, and then the voltage will continue to climb until this capacitor explodes like a 22 shell, and then the actual filament body of one of the tubes, whichever one of these has gone to ground or has gone open and lost its grid volt reference, this cap will explode and then that tube will cherry up and go into Never Never Land. Believe it or not. Seen it happen many, many, many times. These little caps, these chokes, these are World War II surplus. Okay, so we're talking 1940s. They were already 40 years old when they went in this box. Okay, this thing was made in the 90s. So 90, 2000, 2010, 2020. These are 80-year-old components. Pull these out, ground the grids. Now we go forward into the early 90s, and another whole group of engineers come along and said, wait a minute, we are grounding the grids, but we don't need to do it through induction. We can just ground the grids and ground all of them. And those were the brilliant engineers at Henry. So the guy that's sitting out there masturbating himself and trying to justify why he needed to have this huge grid protection circuit inside of his amplifier, that's great. I'm glad that you've got that, and I'm proud that you spent so much of your time putting together a web page, 2, finding a large group of people to come and support your train of thought, and 3, making sure that Google's got you set for your key lead-in words for when you type in grounded grid circuit. It's like the second or third search that comes up. I'm proud of you for that. Go break some shit. Come back and talk to me again. Or I have to sit here in the nightmare living hell of world's greatest detective and figure out what other people broke. And it's not always ham guys, because ham guys treat their equipment a lot differently than CBers do. It's usually CBers. Let's face it, them guys, but it'll make 5 more watts this way. Yeah, but it's not safe this way. Yeah, but it makes 5 more watts this way. And there's no filter in their brain there. It's like, well, it's got to have a high voltage cutout circuit in it, so when you open the cabinet you don't die. But yeah, if you put that circuit in there, it makes it do 5 less watts. Sorry, got off on a tangent here. We're going to ground the grids. We're going to use a piece of 16 gauge solid copper, or no, way lighter than that. What do I use? Uh, 22 gauge solid soft drawn copper, and we're going to do a little diamond pattern. We're going to go from here to here to here to ground. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll remove all of these parts. This doesn't look teabag. This really doesn't. Let's see what we got on the top side. So, I didn't have the opportunity to learn a lot of things from my granddad. One of the things that he told me was, young man, if something's working and it's electrical, and it's been working for 10 or 15 years, leave it alone. So let's see. This thing was created in the mid to late 70s, this design. Okay, it was mass manufactured and continued to be manufactured, this kit and this part, until the early 90s. This particular amplifier. We'll think of all the other 3500Z based amplifiers that were built in that timeline. Okay, the Drakes, the Henrys, the Kenwoods, like the 922A. I read this guy's page about all this different shit he did to his 922A, and it didn't produce any more power. It pulled the same amount of current out of the wall, and the amp still operated because the components that were inside the amplifier, i.e. the tubes, run at the same efficiency rate, period. Didn't do anything more for it, but he added all this stuff to the inside of his box. Okay, so there's pros, there's cons to all of that. Okay, the pros are you've taught yourself a lot about the internal circuitry of the device, which is good. I promote that all the time. I stand for that 365 24/7. Learn how your shit works, so if it breaks you can fix it. Alright. But he added a lot of stuff to something that has already been working for 30 years. The post came out in 2007, so 90, 2000, almost 20 years worth of operation, and this guy says it's a poorly designed device. It's already lasted for 20 years. It's been taken in and out of tune about 7 million times. How much better do you want the thing to be designed? Or do you think you might be over-engineering the frickin' hamster wheel? That's my opinion on it. Because I've had people call me and ask me about this guy's review on the 922A, which is basically the same goddamn thing as this. Voltage doubler circuit. It's got the same thing, all the same tech, except a little bit better components. Like the cabinet's heavier, the body of the device is heavier, the metering circuit's done a little bit differently. The tuners are a little bit heavier dutier, and the band switches are better. Basically the same device as this. Somebody's been in here and tried to clean this. Looks pretty good though. Really does. Even though this thing was beautifully packed, the transformer's still laying against the cage. What happens is this gets dropped. Remember, this thing was disassembled in a flat, okay? So you got a little crate that came with this amplifier originally. I only know this because I've seen pictures. If I can find a guy that's got an original one of these in a kit out there someplace and he'd let me build it for him, I'd probably do it for free. Let me build this thing from a kit, from completely disassembling the crate to a finished product. I would give my right eye to have that video for you guys to watch, by the way. I would, oh, love that. Anyhow, the transformers would come in this little tiny crate, okay? The rest of this came in a flat cardboard pack, flat pack, and then the tubes came in their own separate package. So here we are today. Nobody wants to completely disassemble the thing to send it out to me to get it repaired, obviously, so they send me out with the transformer in the amp. What it does every single time is the thing gets dropped at some point or another in shipping, and this transformer, because of its weight and the weakness of the cabinet floor on this side, always rotates over to this screen. Every time. Every time. So I've created a jig that I put in here that's made of wood. I take a 6-pound shot hammer and I turn this thing upside down. I take this plate off the side, which usually this plate bows. This one's smooth. I take this access panel off the side, flip it upside down, and whack, hit it once, and this thing will stand up perfectly straight again. So, wow, that fan has lost all of its mojo. All of it. We're going to give it the bubblegum test. Oh, I finally get to use that reference. 2 years ago, I'm at the BBI Bakerman break, and I am dropping this amplifier off for this gentleman to get that I'd repaired, and he had one of the red Sprague capacitors in there. And I was squeezing on it because the Sprague capacitor had absorbed a bunch of moisture from the outside atmosphere, and it was soft, and I was like, man, we're going to call these bubblegum caps. And he comes walking up to me, and he goes, man, I got a gift for you, BBI. I'm like, yeah, what? And he comes and he pulls out from behind his back, he goes, check it out. Now, I opened this when he first gave it to me, and I got myself out some bubble gum, and it was soft. That was 2 years ago. You guys remember this gum from when we were kids. This is just extruded rope bubble gum. But if you squeeze it and pinch it, when it's new, it'd be soft and malleable. You know what I mean? I thought that was so awesome. He went out and he found double bubble bubble gum. The Fun Team tub. Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, boy. Oh, it's getting softer. Oh, gum is disgusting. Anyhow, I made that reference, and I think everybody in the radio world knew exactly what I was talking about. So we give these caps a good squeeze. These are dry. It's always a blocker that gets soft too. Not the bypass cap, but blocker. Nothing's good. We'll actually check it. Have faith. I have a capacitance meter. I have several. Because squeezing it really isn't a test. I'm here to tell you. God, I don't know why I ate that gum. It tastes like butt. Ugh. All right, so what I want to show you is the tilt on this capacitor, or the tilt on the transformer. So now, hold on a second. Let me readjust here. This space here isn't even anymore. The transformer's actually leaning up and away. It's because the floor is bent. And if we looked up here, even with the lid, you can see how this has got a dimple in it. The reason we got a dimple in it is because the floor is bent away from here. And the metal had to give, fatigued in this direction in. So, it is what it is. Don't matter, we'll fix it. Oh, look at them old school, these old fill capacitors. Oh, old school electrolytics. So here's our ground, which by the way is laying on the other side of this capacitor. This is our ground lead, this is our AC lead, and this is our hot here. And look at how much space we have to work with. Okay? You see how these are, my fingers are now all sticky. Look at this. It's like snot. It's like double-sided sticky snot. Good old C-beer smoker. Good old smoker technology. See how these capacitors are all sitting, the resistors are all sitting up? That's the reason I said we got plenty of room so we can put our new ones in its place. Okay? And we'll have plenty of clearance. It won't be an issue here. But before we go and we rip this whole thing apart, let's make it not so skunky on the inside. We'll have loose parts. Okay. So, what you guys are watching me put on here is a virginal clean rag. Actually, I want to do this the other way around. The reason I flipped it over is I got to thinking about it. Most of the filth that we're going to try to attack is here. I don't want all that filth to run this way through the RF deck. Somebody spent a little bit of time over the years cleaning this already. Okay, so this is a slow burn process. The cigarette stain takes a minute to get on there, and it's going to take a few minutes to come off. Now, I use the black towel for contrast most of the time, for visual contrast for you guys. Makes it easier for you to see on video what I'm working on. But we're going to put down this white towel. And that'll help you guys be able to see what the gunk is that the black towel is going to normally absorb. It's going to act like a diaper. Now, gotta be careful how long I let this solution set on our most precious thing in this box, which is our front band switch, by the way. And we don't want to let the Windex and the 409 sit for too awful long on like our blockers, that kind of thing. But our high voltage board, we're going to let this soak, because this is a multi-stage process trying to get this cigarette schmoo off of here. We don't have to worry so much about cleaning the caps or the bleeders, because we're going to replace those. But let's give ourselves the best opportunity for success here. Okay. Oh, it's so gross. Okay. Gotta let this soak for a minute. Okay, so we're gonna finish this process up of cleaning this cabinet now. It's been soaking for about, 45 minutes or so. We're gonna use a very specialized kind of cleaner. It's got written on the bottle about 19 different ways to put death. This is my Scott full face respirator that I use for all kinds of different things, because I haven't been the nicest to my body when I was in my 20s. And now that I'm in my 40s and got a kid and I want to see her grow up, I figure the best I can do is keep the particulates out of my lungs that shouldn't be there, like copper, fiberglass, carbon fiber, and all these kinds of things. So they're purple, which means nuclear grade, and it'll kill off most of the caustic chemicals that are going to get sprayed inside of this thing. You're going to be a little bit careful. Be a little bit careful that we don't get any close to this plastic. So. Oh yeah. I'll see you in about an hour when this room defumes itself. God, I hate this shit. Now, the reason it's so critical that we wash that the way we did is we got to be careful how long we let soap residues and moisture, because most of 409 and Windex is water with some detergent agents added to it. That has a tendency to affect electronic components, especially high voltage stuff, in a not so good way. So we want it to soak in long enough to emulsify the cigarette stain and the goo and the garbage, but we don't want it to super penetrate like our blockers. Remember how I was just talking just a minute ago about bubblegum soft capacitors? God, that stuff stinks. There's a ton of it in this towel. But It's squeaky clean now. And we did it all with very little brushing. I mean, it's clean. This is smooth now. And there's no discolorization, anything. Our band switches will not oxidize, will not have any oxidization from this, because we cleaned it with a very aggressive alcohol, which will cause the moisture. The alcohol will bond with the water, and it'll cause the water to flash off. Okay, it's going to drive off of the components the moisture, and it's just this flashing off process. Evaporation, basically, a fancy word for evaporation. And in the same breath, it's going to pull any moisture molecules that are in the metal, the pores of the metal, that are going to cause oxidization, and pull it out. So we got this thing cleaner than it's been probably in 20 years. We pulled it off. This thing looks really nice on the inside now. Okay, so let me get this, for a lack of a better word, cum-coated rag out of here. There's all little metal bits and shit up in this thing. I gotta take this outside. That chemical that I cleaned it with is very caustic. Very, very bad. It displaces oxygen very well, and your body has an ability to absorb it. So you take off this nut screw washer assembly, this one and this one, and it allows this whole assembly to come float up and float free. This whole assembly comes out. Now you got to be careful what you do with this, because it's also attached to your high voltage board, which is also your metering board. So now what I have learned over the years of doing this is your ground lead, we're just going to cut it. Positive lead, we're just going to cut that too. The only one that we have to make an honest Joe engine effort here, the honest Joe effort, is the high voltage tap off the transformer. It goes right here. Now it's free. So we very carefully take our high voltage lead and we work it up out of the way. Give this little twist. Out this comes. Now somebody decided to be silly when they first put this together, and there's a layer of silicone that's on here. It's not necessary. Now this capacitor bank is still good for the most part. I saved these. Let me explain to you why I saved these. Because there might be a guy that sends me his amplifier, his little sb220, and let's say he doesn't have enough money for the $150, replacement capacitor bank, and he's only got one bad cap or maybe two bad caps in his bank. Well, I put these on a leak down tester and I'll test them, and I bet you out of this bank I could probably pull 3 or 4 of them that are going to pull out real good, and we can put that in his box and get him running for like 25 or 30 bucks minus some labor, and he'll get another 15-20 years of life out of the amp. So we're going to save this in its entirety. Usually these little transfers here that hold everything in place, God, the guy glued them in there. These little trays are completely opaque. This pack is actually in really good condition, to be honest with you. Really, really good condition. So we're going to let that sit. Now, I got to back the camera up. The way this pack is oriented is that you're going to have this lead, and this lead, and you're going to put them towards the front. You're going to slide that right back inside this same tray. Now this is the fun part, and this is the art. It's getting this mofo back together. It never, ever, ever wants to go easy. It's always so much not fun. So, I'll give you a couple little tips and pointers. If you are interested in doing this capacitor replacement, one of the things you can do is the top and the bottom panel. You can sand it just a little bit. The thing is that the panel, to make this the panel inserts work properly, to give the right amount of spacing around all the capacitors, it's technically too big. So you can sand the top and the bottom portions of the panels. I didn't do that on this. Now, the stock spacer, because I know a couple tricks, the stock spacers that they use, the separators for the capacitor bank, will refit these old caps perfectly. And I mean perfectly. So you can reuse those if you want. But the spacer that comes with these things on the capacitor bank, it makes it almost impossible for you to have enough thread on the end to be able to make the little star washer fit, and for you to be able to start the nut. Oh, come on. Oh, ah. See what I mean? So the trick is you start this one and then you start this one for two reasons. They're the easiest to get to. One. And two, you can suck the whole assembly, the C-clamp assembly down. And what the board does in there around the caps is it does this. It wobbles and it dips. And that gives you enough thread sticking down. I mean, I don't know how they expect a 7-year-old guy to get his fingers in here to get this going, but I think them brilliant guys at Harbach would come up with a little bit better design. There we go, finally started. Okay. Now let's put this back straight. The trick is not to over tighten these, by the way, because you'll start reefing on these things. They'll just keep coming and coming and coming. You don't realize how much pressure is building up behind it. And it'll just pop. That's it. End of the story. Done. It'll just strip out on you because there's so much pressure involved here. Okay, let's flip this back down and let's go put the high voltage side back together. Okay, so we've moved on to grounding the grids. I've already done this socket here, made you look, and it's grounded out. And now we're going to do this socket over here. Okay, we've only got to provide at one point of ground source. In the beginning, I was grounding all these tabs independently and stuff, and I figured out that it doesn't matter, ground's ground. Such a small amount of current that's present that it doesn't really require that much. I go to the hobby store and I pick me this stuff up. It's made by Hillman. It's 18 gauge, soft drawn, very, very flexible, lovable, workable copper. And this is really all we need. You don't need to worry about using stranded lead. There's not enough movement here to justify stranded wire, although it could be done with stranded wire. I just prefer how clean and neatly I can do this with just a real solid bus wire. So you could use mag wire if you wanted to. Just kind of roughly set that off. We're going to put a little hook on it. These old tabs take a few minutes for the metal to get hot enough that it wants to play along with the rest of us. Grab this and take it off at not that extreme angle. Let's do this thing, and now it's solid. Okay. Now my favorite tool of torture device, because I've got these big fat portly fingers of mine, is to grab me some roach clips, otherwise known as hemostats. I'm just going to clamp that in place and hold it down. And still holding, still holding. Still holding. There it goes. And we're done. Let the liquid become a solid. And we're done. Okay, so we're going to grab our little roach clips, our hemostats, grab a hold of that. I've had these show up where guys have used huge sheets of copper, and that's not what we're wanting to do. The induction length of the copper sheet can cause problems elsewhere, just so you know. So I just want to provide this a nice, solid, reliable, conductive source to ground. That's all we're trying to do. We don't want to over-engineer the wheel. It's never worked out well anywhere in history. So now, when you over-engineer the wheel, we'll take and hoop that through our little eyelet, just like so. We'll bend it around so it's solid. Make sure it's got a nice swooping turn to it, nothing tight, nothing sharp. That's it. Grids are grounded. Okay, let's play with doing the soft key modification now. Alright, I got enough video and I got enough time. Now, the instructions read as follows. Blue wire from the antenna relay connection, this one here, goes to relay connection on the board. Black wire goes to ground. We're going to tie it in here. The blue wire gets reinserted back over here, and the red wire is what runs over to the hickamajabi thingy-majiggy over here. Everybody got that? Good. I'm not kidding you. It's literally that simple. Okay, so first things first, I like to use this mount nut right here on the cabinet, me personally. It's got enough extra thread that you can put the little spacer on it. Some guys will tie it to the bottom of the socket. In my opinion, that brings it a little bit too close to our RF end of the business. It's real simple. Over here, we're going to tie to this lead here, right here. This is the red lead. This is what gives us our 110 volts worth of DC voltage, which runs our relay. Okay, so we've got to power the board. So that means we've got to give it a source of voltage, which is going to be 110 volts, and then we've got to give it, well, not source, we got to give it as our return, which is 110 volts positive, and our source, which is going to be ground. So you got to give it ground, then we got to give it a means of signal for case ground, and then we have to give it a means of return signal to drive the relay. Okay, what this does is it takes 110 volts, simply knocks it down, and then we run it through a MOSFET IC. We're going to use a switching transistor to switch the MOSFET IC, which in turn will fire the relay. Very, very very simple. So there's a couple ways we can go about doing this. We can zip out all these zip ties and put new ones in here and take away from the mystique of stock. We can snip out the zip ties and we can put a bunch of hand ties in it and make it look all pretty. Or we can simply do this. Sneak this wire down under, oh, you're gonna make me look like a not knowing individual on camera, aren't you, wire? So, oh, don't break the 20 or 30-year-old zip tie there, BBI. Okay. Let's shy it here, oh, daddy. Okay. We're gonna go down. Go over here. Now, there's a bunch of mods that you can do to this thing that they make commercially viable components for. Like the absolute complete bullshit of the soft start circuit. It's bullshit. There are guys that are going to be like, oh no, it's not, it's complete. No, you have to, it's going to make the capacitors and the... Listen. Because we're running with a voltage doubler and this isn't a full bridge rectifier, that means half the electrons that are created for the high voltage, the voltage stacking takes place inside the capacitor bank. So there's very little inrush current going into the capacitor bank because it is part of the summed source, not as a passive filter. There's a difference. Okay, so why aren't you laying down the way I want you to, wire? When these guys call me and they want me to install the soft key circuit, or the soft start circuit for, I tell them don't waste your money. Once you get it, you'll find that it's two very shitty tiny little 10-watt resistors, 2 relays, and no timing circuit. It's literally click, click. There. That's it. That's it. That's all there is to it. And I just think about the current flowing into the circuit and through the circuit, and I don't see the huge short, electrical short that would be present, like what you would have with a full bridge, full wave rectifying circuit, and a little bit more substantial of filtration circuit. By the way, a voltage doubler circuit is brilliant, and it can be used in a lot of applications. It can be even used up on a 3000 as long as your plate transformer has got enough lead in its shorts to carry the weight, i.e. it's got enough amperage to it to be actually able to hold up with the current necessities of the circuit. So ground is ground. In the manual instrucciones, they tell us that they want us to take this black wire and tie it to the negative side of the ALC circuit. Well, the negative side of the ALC circuit, that tab, is also the ground terminal for your RF, your coax connector. I'd like to keep these two circuits as separated as with distance as far as ground is concerned as much as possible, and ground is ground. Since all we're trying to do is power the circuit at this point, trying to power our board. So, since we just grounded our grids over here, on this tab, we're going to utilize this tab here as well. Now, the other thing I like to do is I like to take my ground wire, because we're going to do a fan modification that nobody seems to ever talk about, but it just seems like it's one of them things that's right there in front of your face, and if you'd stop and think about it for a hot minute, it'd make perfect freaking sense to you. Here in a minute, we got to make sure that we keep this portion of the environment free of tangling. So we've got ourselves about a good 1/4 of an inch clearance, and we've got ourselves about an inch worth of clearance here. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we unsolder this blue wire. Like so. Now, once you pull that out of there, because this is a very low temperature rubber jacketed wire, we're going to take that strained piece of wire that we just manipulated off the eyelet. We're going to cut it off. We're going to take our strippers and strip this wire off. We're going to nub ourselves off, a good 1/16 or more worth of length. And we're going to put a hook in it. So we're going to take it so the wire is straight. We're going to put a hook in it. We're going to manipulate this over here. We're going to make it so the wire goes through the board. Through the board. Very important. Solder that into play. Just a little dab will do ya. Then we take our blue wire once again. We're going to wrap it around the top part so it lays across the top of the cabinet on the inside, away from our coax connector of our input coax and away from our ALC jack. Okay? We're going to make it so it hoops down. It comes back to the center pin. So we're going to measure that out, just like so. And the reason we're doing it in such an elaborate form, not absolutely necessary, but is we want to make sure that this trigger wire, and that's really all it is our now 12-volt ground trigger wire, is free and clear of our RF path, our receive path, our automatic limit control circuits path, and it's up to negative 50 something volts. And we're providing it a safe routing away from any ability from being up and being able to get caught as we put the armor off and on. Very important. So bring this around, grab a hold of our little wire, we twist it around, and now the hole that we opened in the eyelet should be just hanging there nice and open for us. Take our wire, we insert it through, a little glob of solder, and we're done. Soft key circuit installed. Very simple, very quick. Shouldn't be any more complicated than that. Now, when you go out and you Google this, and let's say you're like me and don't like to read things and just like to look at pictures because you're lazy and whatever, there are really not a lot of pictures of this on the inner boob to be found. There's one or two, but the instructions, which if you guys haven't noticed, I haven't picked up once, are very clear on how this goes together. Very, very clear. Now, this particular kit that decided it was going to drop itself into my universe, when we go through the parts list, here I was on the right page, when we go through the parts list, there are 3 diodes that need your attention. Okay, the 1N 4005, the 1N 60A, okay, and then the 1N 4148. These are all very important that we get them in the right place because they all have very specific different jobs and their tolerances are very different. The most important one is this one here, at least in my universe here. Okay, this is the 4005, the 1N 4005 diode. They didn't put any in the kit. It wasn't in the kit and it should have been. Your other 2 glass germanium diodes, one's here in D3 and the other one's here in D2, are very clearly labeled. They're on their own separate packet, and so you don't have to get out a microscope or a pair of viewing spectacles with 3000 magnification of lens and try and hold it up and figure out what it is they've written it on the package. If you buy the capacitor bank replacement kit with the board like what I got or my customer got for this amp, it comes with a packet of these diodes. These happen to be very common 1N4005 diodes. Please note I did not put these diodes on the board. I have had probably 25 failures with these diodes being present on the board from the diode itself failing in circuit. Nothing else in the circuit has gone wrong, but the diode that they've got in that circuit to quote help complete the other half of the bridge circuit is their logic, shorts, goes open, and it wipes out the whole high voltage board. So I don't install these. I just replace the capacitors with a new, little bit better technology on the high volt side of life. I leave these out. But knowing when I opened this kit and noticed that I was short this one particular part from Harbach, I knew that I had extras. It's a little food for thought on both topics. The actual diodes themselves and their job in the amplifier, and where you can obtain a replacement component for your soft key circuit if you need it. Okay, grid's grounded. I didn't show this on camera, but we did disconnect this cap and we checked it for leak down on our Atlas capacitance checker. Which looks like this, because this is it. And we've got no problems. I see no problems on this side of the cabinet. Now, we're going to flip this thing over. And we are going to go, it's loose. We're going to go to the other side. And before we break away from this little segment, I am going to take the camera off the tripod and we're going to get, well, here, I'll just do it this way. I can, because I'm in charge of the camera. Check it out. That's the way this should look installed. Red wire goes over to the positive lead on the 110 volt positive circuit. Your blue wire here comes from your connection on your RCA connector in the back, and you move it from the RCA connector over to here. Okay, very simple. Your ground wire goes to ground, black wire over here, and then the blue wire off the board comes to your trigger source point, which is over on your RCA cable over here. Right there. Okay? Very, very simple. And that's also the orientation of all the resistors and all the components in their proper placement. On to the next step. Contact. Moving on. Okay, what used to take me an hour to find parts. I'm going to come over here. Use some gloves. Use some Scotch-Brite pads and run over our tube books. The History of the Known Universe, Volume 1, and the History of the Known Universe, Volume 2. Otherwise, like the Bible and it's amended versions, I guess. All I gotta do is set this toad out. Set that there on that Leaning Tower of Pisa. High voltage capacitors. All fields. Let's move our two variacs. Very light. This one's incredibly heavy. Alright. Meters, caps, high voltage boards, band switches, front and back plates. I believe the parts I'm looking for in this tote. Okay. These are SB parts. So this is band switch front, 4 of them, front panel meters, more band switches, for a replacement knob set. Down in here, stuffed away, is a completely 100% brand new fan. It isn't all full of cigarette jism. We're going to need this. Replacement motors. More replacement motors. A couple more band switches. These are like unobtainium, by the way. And for our friends that run the Kiowa Warrior, all our replacement bulbs and meter faces. And down in here, more knobs. And another knob. So we will find the best of the best out of this assortment of menagerie of shit. That's what you guys gonna get. This is one of about 4 boxes of just straight up legit sb220 parts. Like, the meter element itself is broken, right? The lens is broken, but the backing plate behind it is not broken. And there's like 6 different kinds. So, like, I'll have a meter show up, like this one here, to where the armature is snapped off or bent, but the movement is still good, right? So, worst came to worst, I could still use the body. You see where I'm going. My wife's like, God, throw that shit away. I'm like, no, it's good. You're gold in them with our parts. Okay. And I got 2 or 3 fan kits that are worth the shit that are in here, between this one and the other couple boxes. Gold. My wife has no idea how much money's in this box. Let's not tell her, okay? We'll keep it a secret between you, me, and the other 10,000 plus YouTube video viewers. Okay, it's the old fan. I just cut it out because we're going to do something different here. Old fan, amp gauge, volt gauge, variac. So we're already at 41 volts and the fan's not turning. 60 volts, we're pulling 3/4 of an amp. 90 volts, half an amp. 100 volts, 107 volts, pulling a full half amp. And that's the best we got. It's barely spinning. Okay, so now our replacement fan that isn't all full of slime, let's take and we'll hook up to our same rig. Make sure none of our leads get caught in the fan blades. Okay, so here we go again. 30 volts, fan's already starting to turn. 60 volts, already spinning faster than the old fan. 80 volts, 90 volts. I have a firm belief that this will work way better for him than that, taking into account that's 100% new. So everywhere I go, I keep my eye out for these 110 volt little motors, right? And they've got to have the right shaft size, spindle size on them for the fan bodies. Now, there's nothing wrong with this fan other than it's completely stained orange, which makes it we can fix that. I have the chemical technology to make it pristinely white again and not make the plastic brittle. So we'll probably end up saving a fan, and probably take the fan all completely apart and clean all the bushings up and stuff in it. But for this particular situation, it's better for us just to simply replace the fan. Okay, now let's make it run really quiet, just like it's sitting here running for us now. Let's install it. The key to making these really quiet is literally 25 cents worth of rubber grommets from Harbor Freight, of all places. Chinesium, they go stronger. So what we do is we over drill these holes, put 2 small rubber grommets in here, and then shove our leads for our fan through it. When we drill these holes out, we knock them down exactly. You see these screen holes here? We knock them down exactly 1 hole. That 1 hole of height translates to the full 1/4 inch of clearance that we have for our fan blade. So if we're looking at this straight on, the fan is actually now sitting lower in this circular depression. The reason we're doing that is to provide more airflow to the bottom side of the tube. The stock sb220 setup, the fan sits fully up here at the top, and almost no air movement moves across the bottom side of the cabinet. None whatsoever. Well, in long transmission modes, I don't care if it's at 80 meters or 10 or 11 meters, unless you've got some kind of air movement across those pins on the bottom side of the tubes, they get pretty hot and they can't unsolder themselves. So I found by scooching this down by just 1 hole, dropping the whole fan down by 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, allows us just to get just enough air through this square opening at the bottom, just enough air that it kind of wafts a little bit of love across the pins. It's a modification that you don't find on the internet, ever. You'd be better off if you go to Home Depot, get yourself 4 pieces of black ABS plastic tubing that are about, I don't know, 1 inch across, that you can put the feet of the amplifier in. Get tubing stops for the ends of the tubes and make it so the amp sits up off your workbench about that far. And then get yourself a little 120 millimeter muffin fan blowing air up on the bottom. Anywho, silent running. All right, let me wire it in. Standing over here just happily working away, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta show me making parasitics. This takes 2 100 ohm 5 watt resistors, have to be carbon pack or non-metal, non-wire inductive. Oh, gonna grab ourselves some 16 gauge wire, 1 bird 43 or 7/8 of an opening. Slug. We're gonna make ourselves some horseshoes, just like so. Just like that. The parasitics are gonna sit roughly there. I learned how to make these from a dude by the name of Mike Beaver. Super nice guy, dude. Just deep backwoods drawl. Well, you know there, BBI. You find you get a whole lot better parasitic she's a real smooth talker. Get a whole lot better parasitic suppression if you make yourself up some horseshoe parasitics. Now the chat room that I was sitting in that he was telling me about this, telling me all about this in, a bunch of old guys, right? And old guys knew what the hell he was talking about. I was like, a what? A what? A what? A what? So I called him on the phone, good old 21. I said, hey man, what's the hell are you talking about? And he was working on a, I'm going to swear at you here in a minute. I was working on a 4-tube Dentron. That's my swear word of the day. Garbage. A parasitic filled pile of shit. Poorly laid out dump truck. But I didn't know no better. And I just needed to fix this stupid amplifier for this guy. And so Mike was cool enough to sit down with me on the phone and very calmly and quietly explain to me how to build these. And ever since then, I've seen nothing but good positive results from this style of suppressor. The wrap suppressor had its day. We're past that now. We've grown up. Our balls have dropped. We've learned more. You'll find with the 3500Z that you've got to be very, very careful about your inductor length at the anode, top of the anode tube, the top of the tube at the anode. And the capacitance on the 3500Z is thus that it can lend itself, if your inductor is too long. You go put the tube into operation, and as soon as you excite the tube will take off and run away. And your parasitic suppressor will just disappear into flames of glory. That should be your clue that you need to shorten up your inductor length. So that's it. Now, if I was to slap a set of very cheap, shitty Chinese eyelets on the end of this and use nickel-plated wire, and only make the leads about this long, I could sell these on eBay for, what, $15 a set. And people would buy them all day long, some 3,000, some people. Not silver-plated wire, nickel-coated wire. Okay, so we built our parasitics now. We've grounded our grids. Everything else checks out. I feel fairly comfortable I don't need to do any voltage checks on this, but we are going to be really super smart about it, and we're going to bring this up on a Variac. So let me get set up for that. So we have a problem. The paint on the front of this thing is stupid thin. I got to trying to clean the sticker residue off up here, and I just touched this lens of this meter and melted it with the chemical I was using to try and clean this. It opaqued this whole lens, so I was able to dig us out a new replacement lens, but this orange stinge that's on the front of this thing, we might have to learn to live with it unless the customer, my friend, wants to pay to replace that. Now, that being said, as this sits there and does its magic, I was able to clean the knobs back up so that they're all pretty and shiny again and don't look like they come out of somebody's ashtray. So now we sit and we're going to wait as this thing does its job. Hopefully we'll be able to get the nicotine off the front of this thing. It's primarily what we've been chasing most of the time, is just getting the nicotine off the front of this cabinet. Now, I'm hoping that when we go to run this, because it is in fully functional order now, we have fired it up. I got to clean the connections on the high volt grid meter. But we're hoping that this is almost the end of this song and dance. And hopefully the 10 meter input slug isn't out of whack as it normally is. And we'll do this 2 or 3 times. As you can clearly see, the nicotine is coming off, which is a blessing. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about this here. I don't know what it was, but it's on there pretty good. The grime come off around the switches. God bless Armor All and some of their products. Yellow and sticky. I mean, if a guy is going to wait 7 to 8 months for me to work on something for him, I do feel that I should give it my most honest effort that I possibly can and take my time. Would you not agree? Hopefully this comes out on camera. See that orange that's in there? With the right mix of chemicals, and we just carefully let it soak. White. Nice, clean, nicotine free. All pretty again. Good for another 30 years operation, I think. Alright, so we'll put this on here orientated thusly. Cool. All right. Let's run it. Low's working. Solid as a rock. This was a little sketchy a few minutes ago. But what I did is I took my contact file for relay points and very carefully, with the hands of an eyeball surgeon, reached in there and cleaned the contact points behind the relative power grid and so on switches in the back. Everything works. Measured the filament volts with voltmeter. Measured the plate voltage with a voltmeter. We've got no AC ripple. That means our capacitor bank is good. Duh, it's brand new. You know, a real ghetto hood tactic way of checking this is usually the filament. If there's a problem with the filament in any way, shape, or form, these lights won't come on. It's the same transformer, just different taps. Of the same winding, believe it or not. So, yeah, we're good. I got to put the knobs on the front of it, which are all cleaned up and look like brand new. And let's put some tubes in it. What do you think? Let's get on with this dog and pony show. It's done yet and it doesn't even know it. We're just going to go ahead and bring it right in on high. Now, as you guys know, since my last sb220 video, we had to wave goodbye to a good soldier. So, this sloppy old girl got herself struck down in her best days. Now I've got a special plan. It finally dawned on me what I was going to do with this tube. We're going to take it apart on video. I'll show you the guts of it. This is one of two of my original test tubes. The tubes that I've used. Here's the other one. In about 1.5 million videos. These two 3500Zs. So these are brand new little girls to me. These are RF parts tubes, and I do this to prove a point that they're decent and they work well. Okay, these are brand new to me. Brand new period. God, that fan moves a lot of air. Okay, so really? Hello. Oh. We're going to spin this slug around, okay? 5-watt slug. We're going to start off with about 3/4 of a watt dead key. So, for 10 and 11 meters, we're not going to need a lot of capacitance. We'll start out with them fully uninterleaved, otherwise at 10 and at 10. So first, let's establish zero signal. We got to show the front of the amp for zero signal. Okay. Just about 180 mils. About 1.8 at zero signal, which is good. So now let's look over here at our watt meters again. And these should take off pretty quick. Yeah, I'm still keyed up with my foot pedal. I'm just zooming in here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to start finding resonance. So first we're going to grab our load. And we're going to grab our tune. And back to our load. Back to our tune. Back to our load. Remember, this is with 3/4 of a watt dead key. Boom, there it is. Come off the pedal. Make sure we're in 0 and 0. We are. Hello. Hello. Okay, so keep from permanently damaging our 5-watt reflex slug. Now we're going to focus on the right-hand meter, all the way on the right, and it's in peak. Hello. I'm going to put about 10 watts worth of drive in it. Hello. Make about 800 peak watts. Hello. Oh, the input tune's horrible. Hello. Hello. 18 watts going in, we're making roughly 800 watts of output power. This box is fine. It tells me band switches are good. Get a lot of data from that, actually. It tells me that the band switches are good front and back. Her taps are right. Ooh, tubes are stinking. Getting warm for the very first time. Band switches are good. It tells me that my glitch resistor is good. It tells me that my metering circuit is working right, because I'm sitting there watching the amp gauge in the front. Let's check our relative power circuit, because we're going to have to take the front off. We might as well know. Hello. It's working. Let's check our grid meter. Hello. Let's tune this thing by the grid. Hello. Yep. Tune for lowest, grid, highest peak, by the way. So it's supposed to work. So 10 watts going in. So now we're going to turn the voltage up to the radio, bring up to about 20 watts worth of drive. I'm just using a little 2950, but of course I got 3.5 watts of input reflect. Over 1,000. See what we look like on the spectrum analyzer here. Oh, I'm so excited. I got a new attenuator. I'm going to take a 3 dB and I'm going to gang that in place with a 20 dB. So needless to say, my spectrum analyzer is going to be getting a very, very faint signal to listen to. Should make it so I can really freaking use this with high power now. Oh boy. Okay, let me change camera positions here. And to make sure we're well within operational spec. Principal. Amplifier. Hello. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello. Beautiful. Nothing more to say. Alright, well, let's take the face off and tune the input. I hate this bit. This is the most dangerous portion of the whole thing. Now, I'm not going to tell you what we change. I'm not going to tell you what we do. But put 20 watts in. Making around a kW. And we were getting 5 full watts of reflect. I got down. Okay. It's laid down pretty flat. So now I'm going to hook up the ICOM. We're going to run through all the different bands and make sure that we're in top shape. And then I get to do it all over again for camera. But it's the joys of the job. Shall return. I don't want to do this twice. Believe it or not, we're in an 80 meter position. Peak. Hello, 1, 2. Hello. We're in 2x, by the way. 2x. So full deflection on that's 2,000 watts. It's 1,000 watt slug in average. Hello. It's on a pedal. Hello. 1,500 watts output on 80 meters. Hello. Perfectly flat. Hello. Perfectly flat input tune response for 80 meters. Works perfect on 80. Parasitics work perfect on 80. Everything's perfect for 80. Moving on. Got 40 meters. Way out. Okay, it's 40 meters. It's in 2x position again. That one's an average. So, 50 watts average, about 100 watts peak. Fully the limit. Perfectly low input SWR. Quarter of 1 watt worth of reflect. Nice. Okay. Moving on. 40 meters. Didn't have to play with it at all. Just find its tune point. I'd love to have the faceplate on this thing, but I'm glad I didn't go through the pain and the hassle of putting a faceplate on, then have to come back and readjust it. Anyhow, 40. Drive. Oh, amp off. Okay. Faster SWR is good. I mean nothing. 15 and some change. So, good to go. Moving on up. Good old 15 meters. Okay, so drive power. Hello. Same as before. Hello, hello, hello. Pass your tunes good in 15. Hello. Hello. 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. Everything's happy. All modes and all bands. I get to put this all the way back together. Yay, me. Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, Stompa. Let's get this 32 pill out of the way. Let's 15 out of the way. This tin pride's gotta go. This tin man's gotta get moved. Shit. Gotta move the dollars over again. Let's see, this 221's gotta get moved. It's a wizard. This wizard is a wizard. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 24 pills gotta get moved. When I say to you, I'm completely out of space. God, I totally forgot I even had this battery. I'm out of room, you guys. I don't know how else to describe it to you other than I got no more damn space. For me to get to any of my shit, I gotta move a ton of shit. So I don't feel bad about not taking on any new repairs. I mean, it takes a half hour. As once I get this part out that I'm digging down here for, I gotta put all this stuff back. sb220, 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 Telstar. Oh shit. So now the question is, I've got this hole down there that I just took the brand new armor out. Well, new-ish. What can I put in the hole? Crap. Okay. We're going to hit this thing pretty hard now. We want to find out what its maximum potential is. So we're going to start out down on 1X. Okay, so on the right it's 1,000 watt slug in peak. In the middle there is 1,000 watt slug in average and a 5 watt slug in reverse. Hello. Remember, our absolute amount of drive that we can put into this, max, period, no matter what, is about 220 watts of drive. Put more than 220 watts of drive in it, you're going to burn up your grid circuit. You'll have a resistor in the very front end of the amplifier that'll just disintegrate into smoke. Just too much drive. Okay, so we maxed that out. Let's go ahead and we'll max this out on 2X. Laid it in the corner again. All the way down onto 5 now. 2600 watts. Remember though, my tubes are brand new. These babies are brand new. And I got the RF junk dissipation caps on the top, which makes a huge difference in how well this tube runs. So, we're done. for the most part. Now what I gotta do is we're gonna shut this thing off, let the high voltage bleed off, and then I gotta put a fan on top of it and let it run for 15 or 20 minutes and cool the tubes off so I can pull them out. Then I get to put the lid back on. Then I get to put the interior back support plate on, the plate that goes across the back side of the cabinet. And then we're gonna put it back in its armor and put it back in its box. Well, Mark, this is a brand new lid for the most part, or a brand new armor. I had this painted for myself, God, forever ago. And what I'm going to do with your armor is I'll get all the dents banged out of it, and I'll get it all stripped. And I'll have it media blasted, and then I'll have it color matched and repainted for the next guy that needs a completely new one. But this isn't cheap, but this is what you wanted. I remember us specifically talking about it, and I said, man, don't worry about it, I got another one. And I've got 2 or 3 of these that are sitting here, even crinkle coated like the old ones. The only dirt that's on this is from it sitting on the shelf. So I'm going to do the very careful task of trying to reassemble this thing and not scratch anything. So wish me luck. Here we go. Well, there we go, Mr. Mark. It took 2.5 days to do and film. That's the other thing that takes forever to do, is to film this stuff for your guys' viewing pleasure. I hope you enjoy it. It is a hard work of discipline. You know what? This knob's got a scratch in it. I don't like that. Hold on. Okay, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. Dug all the parts out of it. Now, I'm not gonna lie, buddy, when I put the cabinet lid on it, it's got a couple little scuffle marks here and a little tiny microchip up here, but hey man, listen, this is about as restored as you're gonna get back to pristine with all the different mods done to it that you wanted to do with all the right parts. So I feel fairly confident in the fact of making this statement that this is gonna outlast you. And hopefully somebody in your family ends up getting this, because they're going to get a lot of use out of this too. You put 2 good tubes in this thing, it's going to run you the rest of your life. Keep the drive under 200 watts, and it is completely pristine. The only thing that would make any difference is if we were to get you a new silkscreen face, and the only thing that would do would make the lettering stand out a little bit more. So, all that aside, took 2.5 days to do, about $500 and some in parts. Not counting the roughly $250 worth of parts you purchased before you sent it here. So to get one this immaculate and this clean, you're looking at a $700 restoration, and that's $700-800 in parts to get it to this level, you guys. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to charge, Mark, because it's not. What I'm saying is to get one to this level, and that's starting with something that is semi-clean and not chopped up, because the cost of parts is just through the roof. I don't know if you guys looked at tube parts lately, like blocking caps and doorknobs and tuners. Man, so this tuner here is $110. This EF Johnson tuner that's in here. These are all made by EF Johnson, okay? $100 and some tuner. If you can find these tuners, then you got to pay $30-40 to get them here, and that's if the porcelain isn't all stained and from cigarette schmoo. Let's face it, boys and girls, our ancestors smoked, and they smoked a lot, and they enjoyed it, and they smoked a lot of them damn cigarettes, and guess what? Living to 70 to 80 years old, so it is what it is. The meter faces are getting harder and harder to find. I might have damaged that other meter when I was cleaning this thing with some pretty harsh chemicals, but this lens was smoked. Very foggy. If you guys go back and look in it in the video, this one was crystal clear and this one had an orange tint to it, so I was going to replace it anyhow. That's why when I hit it with the rag and I left parts of the rag in the glass, I was like, who cares? This has been a long time coming. And I got a bunch more, as you guys seem to do. I mean, I got sb220 shit sitting over here like mad. And a bunch of sb221s. And sb200s. 4 or 5 sb200s to do. And you can fly through them if you don't video everything. The videoing, I love it and I hate it in the same breath. So, but Mark, I've loved on this thing for 2.5 days and I'm done with it. I'm going to put it back in your Pelican case because that is the most brilliant way I've ever seen to have these things shipped. And I'd like to make a deal with you. If I send this thing back to you in the Pelican case, I'd probably like to buy the Pelican case from you for transporting sb220s. So we'll talk about it on the phone. Guys, I gotta be done. I've got to get moving on. I've got a ton of projects, and it seems like almost every single person that's called me this week, short of them wanting to give me more work and me having to turn it down, has been the same repeatable questions over and over and over and over again. How much longer till my project? How much is it going to cost? When are you going to have the opportunity to work on it? I'm going as fast as I can, guys, and I will not compromise quality for quantity. Will not do it. So I'm not currently taking on any more work, but that's only going to last about a month or so, and then I'll open the doors back up for probably another 30, 40, maybe another 100 projects or so. Bear with me. I'm doing the best I can. Gentlemen, my name is BBI, and without a shadow of a motherfucking doubt, I am the biggest, baddest monster that roams the land out here in Idaho. Biggest duck there is. I don't care what it costs. I'll spend more money to maintain that crown. As long as I got freaking heart beating in between my rib cage, I'm going to keep that crown. Look. This is my job. This is my passion. This is my love. Next to my wife and my family. I'm going to keep going. Have faith. Guys, I got to go. I appreciate you all tuning in. You got questions or anything I can do to help you out, call that number. I'll do the best I can to get you squared away. I'll see you. Bye.